Truth Social is hemorrhaging money at a rate that would trigger emergency board meetings at any Fortune 500 company. According to Trump Media's most recent 10-K filing submitted to the SEC, the platform is burning approximately $6 million every single month. With $18 million in cash reserves remaining, basic arithmetic tells a story no one at Trump Tower wants to admit. The runway is 36 weeks, not months. This isn't speculation, this isn't commentary. This is mathematics derived directly from audited financial statements, but here's where the story gets interesting. Elon Musk walked into Twitter in 2022 facing a similar capital crunch, roughly $13 billion in debt service annually. Mark Zuckerberg in 2023 made the deliberate choice to cut 21,000 Meta employees and pivot toward capital-light AI research. Neither platform founder fell into the trap that swallowed Truth Social whole. So what's different? Let's talk about the hidden mechanics of platform collapse, the burn rate that reveals everything, and the strategic decisions that separate surviving platforms from failing ones. ***, the burn rate breakdown, $6M monthly. $72M annually. ***, research shows that social media platforms typically operate on one of three economic models: advertising-supported networks, subscription-based services, or hybrid models combining both. Meta's advertising network generated $114.9 billion in annual revenue in 2023. Twitter, now X, generates approximately $1.5 billion annually, down 50% from 2022 following the Elon acquisition. Reddit, preparing for its IPO, reported $804 million in 2023 revenue. Truth Social reported $1.5 million in quarterly revenue in its most recent filing. Annualized, that projects to roughly $6 million in annual revenue. The platform is simultaneously trying to generate revenue while burning $72 million annually. The gap between revenue and expenses is a chasm. Our analysis of the 10-K filing reveals several cost drivers. First, infrastructure and server costs. Hosting a social media platform, even one with a smaller user base, requires significant AWS or comparable cloud infrastructure spending. Data indicates cloud infrastructure costs for mid-sized social platforms range from $800K to $3M monthly, depending on peak traffic and data retention policies. Second, personnel. Truth Media employs approximately 75 full-time staff members, according to the filing. The median S&P 500 CEO earns $16.3 million annually, but even mid-tier tech company executives, engineering leads, product directors, compliance officers, command $200K to $400K salaries plus equity. For a 75-person organization attempting to compete with platforms employing thousands, labor costs still represent a substantial burn component. Third, legal and regulatory defense. This is the hidden killer. Trump Media is engaged in ongoing litigation, regulatory correspondence with state attorneys general, and internal compliance expenses that dwarf typical startup legal budgets. Industry case studies show that platforms facing regulatory scrutiny spend 15-25% of operational budget on legal defense. For Truth Social, that represents $10-18M annually in legal and compliance costs. The math doesn't require an MBA to understand. You cannot sustain a $6 million monthly burn with a $6 million annual revenue stream. ***, why the $400M valuation masks a hollow DOUT business. ***, Trump Media was valued at approximately $400 million following its merger with Digital World Acquisition Corp. in October 2021. On paper, this created a narrative, a social media platform backed by a former president, valued alongside early-stage tech companies raising Series B funding. But valuation divorced from revenue and unit economics is theater. Research shows that venture-backed social platforms achieving profitability typically reach 30-40% gross margins before scaling user acquisition. Truth Social operates at -100% gross margins. For every dollar of revenue generated, the company burns $11. Compare this to comparable platforms. Meta's gross margin in 2023, 80%. X's estimated gross margin, 25-35% post-cost reduction. Reddit's gross margin, 15% but improving trajectory. Snapchat's gross margin, 32%. The $400M valuation assumed that Truth Social would follow the trajectory of platforms like Instagram, acquired for $1B in 2012. Generated $5M revenue but served 100M users, or Snapchat, valued at $24B in 2017 despite minimal revenue. The assumption was user growth would eventually justify the valuation multiple. User growth hasn't materialized. Data indicates Truth Social's monthly active users peaked at approximately 3.2 million in early 2023 and has declined to roughly 1.8 million by mid-2024. For context, Instagram reaches 2 billion monthly active users. TikTok reaches 1.5 billion, X reaches 540 million. Even Mastodon, the decentralized Twitter alternative built by volunteers, reached 3 million users at peak. A platform with declining users, negative revenue trajectory, and no clear monetization path is not a $400 million asset. It's a $400 million liability masquerading as equity. ***, the strategic trap that Elon and Zuckerberg avoided *** when Elon Musk acquired Twitter for $44 billion in October 2022. The platform was operationally bloated. Twitter employed 7,500 people. The engineering organization alone comprised roughly 2,000 employees. The advertising and sales team exceeded 1,000. Within 6 weeks of acquisition, Elon cut staff by 50%, roughly 3,750 employees. Within 18 months, Twitter operated with approximately 1,500 employees. Was this brutal? Yes. Were there service interruptions? Absolutely. But the math was inescapable. Twitter's burn rate under the previous ownership trajectory would have consumed $3-4 billion annually in cash. The company couldn't survive that trajectory under private ownership. Elon made the ruthless decision immediately. Mark Zuckerberg, in January 2023, announced Meta would cut 21,000 employees, 13% of its workforce. At the time, this seemed shocking. Meta was generating $114 billion in annual revenue. Why cut so aggressively? Research from Zuckerberg's investor letters and board filings reveals the logic. Meta's operating expenses had reached $74 billion annually. That represented 65% of revenue. To achieve the 50% operating margin that tech investors expect from mature platforms, Meta would need either to grow revenue by 30% or reduce costs by 25%. Zuckerberg chose the latter, betting that automation, AI, and more focused product roadmaps could maintain service quality with fewer people. Truth Social made the opposite choice, rather than confronting the burn rate directly. Leadership maintained overhead spending while user engagement declined. Rather than cutting costs to match revenue, they pursued capital raises to extend the runway. This is the trap, attempting to grow your way out of a business model problem. According to venture capital research from the Kauffman Foundation, startup platforms pursuing growth while ignoring unit economics have a 94% failure rate. Companies that achieve profitability or credibly show a path to profitability within 24 months have a 73% survival rate. Truth Social shows neither trajectory. ***, the 18-month decision point. What happens next? ***, with $18 million in cash and a $6 million monthly burn rate. Basic financial modeling indicates the following timeline. Months 1-6, moderate anxiety at board level. Strategy discussions about cost reduction and revenue acceleration. Investor calls promising new monetization features. Month 6-12, cash reserves drop to $12 million. Cost-cutting measures announced, modest headcount reductions, infrastructure optimization. Desperate capital raise attempts begin. Potential strategic partnerships discussed. Months 12-18, cash reserves drop to $6 million. Runway becomes visibly critical. Board faces existential decision, dramatic restructuring, asset sale, or shutdown. Months 18+, crisis point. Either the burn rate has been reduced by 75% plus, requiring surgical cost cuts equivalent to the Elon Twitter playbook, or the platform faces insolvency. Historical precedent shows 3 possible outcomes at this juncture. First, successful pivot to profitability rare requires ruthless cost discipline and honest reckoning with market position. Second, acquisition by a larger entity unlikely, given regulatory and brand complications. Third, gradual shutdown or skeleton crew maintenance mode. The research suggests outcome 3 is most probable. ***, the structural advantage of platforms that didn't fall into this trap. ***, why did Meta and X survive while Truth Social implodes? Meta inherited 2.9 billion users when it shifted toward AI investment. X inherited 500 million users, even with severe cost cuts. Both platforms had ad networks generating billions in annual revenue. They could afford to be unprofitable for 18-24 months while restructuring. Truth Social inherited a user base of 3 million declining to 1.8 million, generating $6 million annual revenue and burning $72 million annually. There's no profitable end game at this scale without dramatic user growth, which the data doesn't support. The structural advantage is this: platforms with large, engaged user bases have optionality. They can experiment with monetization, cut costs strategically, invest in new features. Platforms with small user bases and declining engagement do not have optionality. Every month of burn brings them closer to the decision point where survival requires actions, massive layoffs, asset sales, shutdown that destroy value. Truth Social is currently in the no optionality zone. What the 10K reveals about board governance research from governance databases shows that S&P 500 companies average 2 board directors, of which 60% are independent, non-affiliated with management. Truth Media's board structure is notably concentrated. The filing reveals executive decision-making that appears to lack the oversight mechanisms that typically prevent burn rate catastrophes at comparable companies. This isn't unusual for founder-led or founder-backed companies. Research shows founder-led companies have board independence rates 10-15 percentage points lower than average public companies. But it does mean fewer external voices challenging the burn rate trajectory. When a company's cash runway is measured in months, not years, the absence of a robust